The sky above Seabrook was the kind of gray that didn't fade. Locals knew the signs well: when the tide stayed quiet and the air pressed on your chest like a weight, a storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The waves churned, pulling foam into the sand like static against a radio, the sound harsh and rhythmic. Gabe Rollins stood at the edge of the collapsed fence behind the old rental house, boots sunk ankle-deep in wet earth. The storm had chewed the coastline raw last night, exposing parts of the bluff no one had seen in decades. Half the backyard was gone, washed clean off. And from where he stood, something stuck out like a broken rib from the earth. He squinted against the drizzle. It wasn't driftwood. He stumbled closer. The object was rusted, rectangular, maybe 2 feet long, and buried halfway in eroded soil. Gabe crouched and brushed away the wet sand, heart knocking a little faster now. A handle. A metal clasp, partially snapped. And on the front, just barely visible beneath the corrosion, the faded outline of a manufacturer's sticker. Royal Guard Storage. He hesitated, glanced back at the rental house. No one's lived there since the late 90s, not permanently, anyway. People rented it short-term sometimes, but the place had a reputation. Tourists thought it was charming until they read up on it. Then the reviews stopped. Locals avoided it altogether. Gabe dug his fingers under the lip of the box and tugged. It didn't budge. He got a better grip and pulled again, this time with both hands. The ground gave with a sucking sound. The box tumbled loose and landed in the wet sand with a dull, final thud. It was heavier than he expected. He thought about leaving it, reporting it maybe, but something gnawed at him. Not curiosity, exactly. Something else. He carried it back to the tool shed behind the house. The storm had spared the shed, surprisingly. He yanked the door open, wiped off a folding chair with his sleeve, and set the box down on the table. The hinges were rusted shut. Gabe found a flathead screwdriver in the old red toolbox he kept for guests who never used it. He pried at the lid. The first edge gave with a snap. Then the second. The smell hit him immediately: old plastic, mildew, and something else. Dust soaked in salt. Inside, nestled in moldy foam padding, were 5 VHS tapes. Unlabeled. Black cases. Each one worn and unremarkable, except for the numbering on the bottom, small, etched by hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gabe reached for the first one, then stopped. He pulled his phone from his pocket, opened the camera, and recorded a short video. His voice was calm, though his fingers shook slightly. Found at 134, Shoreline Drive, behind the rental property. Unearthed after last night's storm. 5 tapes. No labels. Possible connection to the 1997 Foster case. He paused, zoomed in on the tape labeled 1. Everyone in Seabrook knew the Foster case, even if they pretended not to. In July of 1997, Michael and Jenna Foster rented this very house for their anniversary weekend. The housekeeper came Monday to clean. Found both their cars still in the driveway, wallets and phones on the nightstand. Dinner on the table, uneaten. And no sign of Michael or Jenna. No signs of struggle. No footprints in the sand. No witnesses. The front door had been locked from the inside. That was 27 years ago. The house hadn't changed much. Neither had the rumors. Gabe picked up the first tape and turned it over in his hands. The plastic was cracked at the corner, but the real inside looked untouched. His brain flipped through possibilities. Old home movies. Junk left behind. But something about the numbering bothered him. This wasn't random. He opened the garage cabinet. Inside was an old combo TV/VCR unit the owner had stored there, in case the Wi-Fi goes out. Gabe plugged it in, the screen flickering to life with a faint buzz. He pushed in tape 1. It clicked into place. Static filled the screen. For a long moment, nothing but grainy snow. Then, a flicker. The image cleared, slowly. A wide shot of the beach house kitchen. Dim light. Grainy, low-light camcorder quality. At the table, 2 people. Gabe leaned in. The woman was smiling. Blonde, shoulder-length hair, tucking it behind her ear. The man poured wine into 2 glasses. He was mid-sentence, mouth open, caught in motion. They looked unaware of the camera. Michael and Jenna Foster. Gabe's pulse thudded. He hit pause. How was this possible? He backed the tape up 10 seconds, then let it play again. The footage was mundane. Soft laughter, indistinct voices. Then a sound, not from the tape, but from the room. The shed door creaked slightly. Gabe turned, but nothing was there. When he looked back at the screen, the angle had shifted. The shot was closer now. A slow zoom on Jenna's face. But neither of them had touched the camera. His thumb hovered over the eject button. Then the video glitched. The screen went black. And a single white line appeared across the center. Then a voice, crackling, distorted, male. This isn't the beginning. The tape stopped. So did Gabe's breath. He sat there, staring at the screen, cold sweat forming along his back. Outside, the storm finally passed. But something else had just started. Gabe didn't sleep that night. After the tape cut out, he replayed the last 30 seconds a dozen times. Same glitch, same voice, same line, this isn't the beginning. It wasn't just the line itself that rattled him, it was the way it was delivered. Not like a narrator. Not like part of a movie. It sounded close, as if the voice had spoken into a live mic from inside the room. By 2 a.m., the power flickered once and held. Rain pattered softly now, the worst of the storm having moved inland. Gabe sat motionless, staring at the screen long after the tape had stopped. Eventually, he ejected it, slid it back into its case, and placed it on the table beside the other 4. Each tape identical. Unlabeled. Unassuming. Yet now they looked heavier somehow. He considered calling the police. But he knew what would happen. They'd ask why he opened the box. Why he played the tape. Why he didn't call first. And worse, they'd probably confiscate the tapes and bury them under a mountain of cold case bureaucracy. The Fosters weren't exactly a priority anymore. Gabe stood, turned off the TV, and locked the shed before heading back to the house. He lay awake in bed until nearly sunrise, mind replaying the last expression on Jenna Foster's face. A smile. Unaware. Untroubled. But who had been filming? The next morning, Gabe made coffee he didn't drink and returned to the shed. Everything looked the same, untouched. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. He stared at the tapes. Then picked up tape 2. He didn't put it in, not yet. Instead, he grabbed his phone and searched for a name he hadn't thought about in years, Detective Rory Mathis. He'd led the original investigation back in '97. Now retired, last Gabe heard, but still listed in a few public mentions tied to cold case panels and community policing forums. A few more taps brought up an address just one town over in Westport. Retired, but not gone. He scrawled the number on a notepad just in case. Back at the table, he sat in front of the VCR again, tape 2 in hand. He hesitated. Then slowly pushed it in. Whir. Click. The screen flickered. This time the footage opened immediately. No static. Michael and Jenna were in the living room now, sitting on the couch. The light outside was dimming, sunset, probably. They were eating takeout. Thai food containers on the coffee table, a wine bottle half drunk. They laughed. Talked. Jenna mentioned a brother, Matt. Michael mimicked someone from her work. It was intimate, ordinary. A couple on a weekend getaway, enjoying nothing in particular. Then the angle shifted. Gabe sat up straighter. The shot tilted, slightly, as if the camcorder had been picked up, or bumped. But the couple didn't notice. The camera zoomed slightly. Michael turned toward the window. Frowned. He said something, inaudible. Then looked directly into the lens. Did you hear that? Jenna turned, too. Silence. Michael got up and moved out of frame. The camcorder stayed locked on Jenna, who sat still for a few seconds. Then, her eyes flicked toward something behind the camera. She opened her mouth, like to speak. The tape glitched, just for a second, and the screen went black. When the picture returned, the scene had changed. Now the camera was set in the kitchen, aimed at the hallway leading to the bedrooms. No one was in the frame. Footsteps sounded, soft and deliberate. Then the frame jerked, like someone bumping the tripod. A voice, muffled and distant, male, spoke from off-screen. Leave it. It's almost time. And then the tape ended. Gabe stared at the screen, the whir of the VCR slowly winding down. Almost time for what? He rewound the last minute, but the audio was distorted, static muffling every word except that one clear sentence. He opened a voice memo app and recorded the playback on his phone. Leave it. It's almost time. After saving the file, he placed the second tape down next to the first. 2 down, 3 to go. But now it didn't feel like curiosity anymore. It felt like trespassing. He stepped outside, locked the shed again, and walked down the trail leading to the beach. The morning tide was calm now, the sand still damp from last night's storm. A few seagulls pecked around, unconcerned. Gabe sat on the driftwood log that lined the far end of the yard, where the cliff dipped down and led out onto the beach. His thoughts were spiraling. About the tapes, the Fosters, the voice, the shift in camera angles. He thought of something else, too. The house had been empty when police arrived back in '97. Dinner was still set. Wine poured. But no plates had been touched. So why did the tape show takeout containers? Had someone brought food afterward? Or, were the police wrong? Maybe the Fosters weren't taken during dinner. Maybe someone came back after. The sound of footsteps pulled Gabe from his thoughts. He turned. A woman, late 30s maybe, stood a few feet away, holding a grocery bag. You Gabe? Yeah, he said, wary. Can I help you? I'm Rachel. My Airbnb reservation says check-in at noon. I've got the top unit for the weekend. Gabe blinked, realization hitting slowly. Right. He'd forgotten entirely. The upstairs was still listed on a rental site. The owner kept it active year-round. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Sorry. Keys are inside, in the lockbox. She offered a polite smile and moved toward the back door. As she passed him, she paused. Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Gabe looked back toward the shed. Not yet, he said. But I think I'm getting there. Gabe didn't go back to the tapes that night. He couldn't. Something about the sudden arrival of the woman, Rachel, shook him in a way he hadn't expected. It reminded him that time was still moving, that the world outside the tapes hadn't paused, even if part of him wanted it to. He sat at the kitchen table after dark, lights off, the only sound being the faint wind pressing against the glass. Rachel was upstairs, her footsteps light above. Occasionally she'd shuffle across the floor or adjust a chair, nothing unusual, but now every sound made him flinch. The tapes changed something. He wasn't just the property manager anymore. He was a witness. Or maybe worse, he was part of a story that wasn't done telling itself. Around midnight, He got up and opened his laptop. He typed, Foster disappearance 1997 Seabrook, into the search bar. The same few articles popped up. A couple of archived local pieces. Some old Reddit threads. One had a detailed timeline posted by a user named North Coast Truth, compiled from old police documents and public statements. July 4, 1997, Michael and Jenna Foster check into Shoreline Drive rental. Neighbors recall hearing music and laughter that evening. July 5, a local shop owner sees them in town, buying wine and groceries. Friendly. Normal. July 6, no confirmed sightings. No activity on credit cards. July 7, housekeeper arrives for routine cleaning. Finds the front door locked. No sign of the couple. Belongings untouched. Police called. July 8, search begins. Dogs lose scent at the back fence near the bluff. No footprints. No drag marks. July 11, case goes cold. There was one comment under the post that caught his attention. From a deleted user. They were never supposed to be found. He read it twice, then shut the laptop. The next morning, Gabe knocked softly on the door to the upper unit. Rachel answered in leggings and a hoodie, holding a cup of coffee. Sorry to bother, Gabe said. I wanted to ask, have you noticed anything odd? Her brow furrowed. Odd how? Sounds. Things out of place. Just, anything weird. She gave a half smile. This is a rental on a bluff in the middle of nowhere. Everything feels weird. But no, nothing strange. He nodded, hesitated, then asked, do you mind if I check something in the crawlspace under the stairs? There's an old access panel behind the cleaning closet. I just want to look. Rachel looked amused. Sure. Knock yourself out. Gabe moved through the narrow entry behind the stairs. The cleaning closet had long been used for junk, spare light bulbs, ratty brooms, a broken vacuum, but he pushed it aside and found the panel. It took effort, but he got it open. Dust swirled in the beam of his flashlight. The crawlspace was low, maybe 3 feet high, stretching under both units. The ground was dry, packed dirt. He swept the light around, seeing nothing but spiderwebs and a few scattered boards. Then he saw something in the far corner. He crawled forward, knees scraping the ground, and reached it, a small, half-buried wooden box. Inside were old rental logs. He sat back on his heels and flipped through them. Most pages were routine. Names, dates, check-ins. But something stood out. July 1997, Foster, M&J, 3 nights. The entry was crossed out in red pen. Every other entry before and after was intact. Just theirs, crossed out. He flipped ahead. A page from 2002, blank. No entries. A note written in the margin, do not rent. And underlined twice, attic sealed. Gabe stared at the words. What attic? There was no attic listed on the floor plans. He'd been through the property records. The blueprints showed 2 floors and a crawlspace. He crawled back out, dusted himself off, and shut the closet. Rachel watched from the hallway, curious. Find anything? Just moldy paperwork, he said. That was a lie. Back in the shed, he paced for a full 5 minutes before loading tape 3. This time, the screen opened to something new. The bedroom. Jenna sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair. Michael stood in front of the mirror, buttoning his shirt. The atmosphere had changed. They weren't laughing anymore. Jenna looked distracted. Her eyes flicked toward the door, toward the camera. Michael muttered something, barely audible. Gabe turned up the volume. Didn't see anyone out there. Jenna, but someone knocked. I swear, Mike. Michael, it was probably the wind. Jenna, it wasn't the wind. She stood up suddenly, walking toward the lens. Then the picture blurred, briefly, and the audio spiked with static. When the picture returned, the angle had shifted again. The camera was now perched higher, aimed through the narrow crack of the bedroom door. Neither of them were filming. They weren't even in frame anymore. Just silence. Then a faint, rhythmic sound. Breathing. Slow. Steady. Then a whisper. "Don't worry. They'll be gone by morning." Gabe yanked the tape from the machine. His hands trembled. Not because of what he saw, but because of what he recognized. The whisper. It was the same voice from tape 1. The same voice from tape 2. It was always there. Watching. Waiting. Filming. And it was inside the house. Gabe didn't leave the shed for over an hour. Tape 3 lay on the workbench like a crime scene. He stared at it, rewinding fragments in his mind, Jenna's voice, Michael's nervous glance, the whisper behind the door. The breathing. It didn't feel like watching home videos anymore. It felt like opening a wound that hadn't healed. Or maybe one that had never even been seen. He paced the shed with his hands on his head, trying to slow the thoughts colliding inside him. He had 3 tapes left, and one of them was labeled 1, the tape he'd watched first. He kept replaying that phrase the voice had said, "This isn't the beginning." If that wasn't the beginning, what was? He looked again at the box they came in. 5 identical tapes, all unmarked except for the hand-scratched numbers. No dates. No labels. But now, something new occurred to him. What if the numbering wasn't chronological? What if they weren't in order? What if tape 1? The one that had opened with Jenna and Michael drinking wine in the kitchen, wasn't the first tape at all. He powered up the VCR again, slid tape 1 in, and sat back. This time, he watched more carefully. The tape began exactly where it had the first time, the couple sharing wine, laughter echoing faintly against the tiled kitchen walls. The camcorder's angle was stationary, placed on a surface just out of frame, like it was recording casually. But Gabe knew now that nothing about this was casual. He slowed the tape. In the background, near the edge of the hallway, a shadow moved. It was subtle, barely noticeable. But it was there. He replayed it 3 times. A figure moving silently, just beyond the light. The couple didn't see it. They laughed, talked about what they'd do tomorrow, kayaking, maybe drive up the coast. Michael mentioned getting up early to see the sunrise. Jenna said she wanted to sleep in. Ordinary. Perfectly ordinary. And deeply wrong. Because Gabe had seen what came after. He paused the tape, stared at the frozen image. Then hit rewind. 10 seconds. 20. Until something caught his eye. A glimpse of light reflecting on glass, the microwave door behind Jenna. For just a moment, it caught a reflection of the hallway. Someone was there. Standing completely still. Watching. The figure never entered the frame, but Gabe could see the shape, broad shoulders, arms down at its sides. Silent. Still. Like it belonged there. Like it had always been there. Gabe froze. He glanced at the shed door. Locked. The wind knocked lightly against the side of the building. His pulse thudded in his ears. He fast-forwarded to the end of the tape, past the point where it had first glitched and gone black. The same thing happened this time, the white line, the crackling distortion, then the whispered voice. This isn't the beginning. But now, something different followed. A flash, just a single frame. A face. Too fast to register clearly, but unmistakably a human face. Gabe slowed it down. Rewound. Paused, then advanced frame by frame. There it was. Pale. Eyes open. Lips parted. Expression blank. Like a person underwater, or unconscious. Maybe, dead. It wasn't Michael. It wasn't Jenna. It was someone else. Someone Gabe didn't recognize. But the background behind the face was unmistakable. The attic. The one that didn't exist on the floor plans. The one Gabe had read about in the old rental log, the note, attic sealed. His mouth felt dry. He stepped out of the shed and walked briskly back toward the house, moving on instinct now, as if something inside him had decided before he had. He passed the kitchen, up the stairs, into the narrow hallway of the upper unit. He stopped at the far end, where the ceiling sloped inward. There was no visible attic door. No pull string. Nothing. But Gabe had worked on enough houses to know where to look. He ran his fingers along the edge of the ceiling, found a faint seam. Then, near the far corner, a small circular indentation, just wide enough to wedge a hook. He went to the closet, pulled out a folding stepladder, climbed it, and pried gently with a screwdriver. The ceiling panel creaked. Dust rained down. Then a hinge gave way, and the panel swung open. The smell hit him first, dry wood, dust, and something deeper. Musty. Old. He pulled himself up into the narrow attic space, flashlight in hand. It was small, maybe 8 feet long, 4 feet wide. Insulated poorly. Wooden beams stretched across low rafters. Boxes. Yellowed insulation. An old folded tarp. And in the corner, something metal. A tripod. And beside it, another box. Gabe crawled toward it, heart in his throat. Inside the box were more tapes. 12 of them. Each one scratched with numbers that didn't match the original 5. Letters beside them, J, M, X. He picked one up. It was labeled X3. He didn't know what that meant. But he knew what he had to do. As he turned to leave the attic, his flashlight passed over a patch of wall that looked different. Darker. He leaned closer. The wood had been scratched. Words, carved deep into the paneling. Almost frantic. He watches us sleep. Gabe stepped back. His foot slipped slightly on the beam. He caught himself, heart hammering. When he finally made it back down, the sun had started to fall. The sky had gone that golden color that made everything feel too quiet. He closed the attic. Locked the house. And went back to the shed. He looked at the original box of 5 tapes. Then at the one he'd brought down from the attic. X3. He stared at it for a long time before sliding it into the VCR. And pressing play. The tape clicked into place with a hollow sound that echoed too loud in the silence. Gabe sat frozen in the shed, one hand still on the VCR, the other curled tightly around the armrest of the folding chair. The screen glowed dull blue for a few seconds, then flickered. Black. Then static. Then the frame snapped into focus. It was a tight shot, dim and shaky. At first, it looked like nothing, just movement in darkness, a faint glow around the edges, maybe candlelight. Then a figure entered the frame. Not Jenna. Not Michael. Someone else. The angle was low, as if the camera had been placed on the floor. The figure stepped past, barefoot, dressed in dark clothes. They didn't speak. Just moved slowly, deliberately, out of frame again. A voice, deep, muffled, said, "Get the lights." The screen went black. Then it came back to a new shot. A living room. Not the beach house, someplace smaller, maybe a basement. Cement walls. Folding chairs in the background. On the floor, 2 people sat with their backs to the camera, heads slightly slumped forward. Jenna. Michael. Gabe's breath caught. They weren't tied up. Not visibly. But their posture was wrong. Like they'd been drugged. Or given instructions not to move. A voice off-screen asked, "Are we rolling?" Another answered, "Yeah." Tape 3. Then silence. Then music. Classical, grainy and distorted like it was playing from a nearby radio. Something gentle. Vivaldi, maybe. A lullaby wrapped in strings. Jenna stirred slightly, her hand reaching for Michael's. He didn't respond. Then the frame cut, just snapped to black, as if someone had spliced the tape. Gabe leaned forward. When the video returned, the two of them were gone. The folding chairs remained. The cement walls. The radio, now silent. Only one thing had changed. In the center of the frame, placed on the floor beneath a hanging bulb, was a photograph. A Polaroid. And beside it, an empty tripod. No camera. Just the stand. The shot held for a long time. Long enough that Gabe reached for the remote, unsure if the tape had frozen. But then, barely audible, something began playing beneath the silence. A whisper. Looped and distant. "Don't look at the lens. Don't look at the lens. Don't look." Over and over. Gabe hit pause, the audio halting mid-whisper. His throat was dry, his pulse loud in his ears. The tape timer blinked, 27 minutes and 13 seconds, then suddenly jumped backward on its own. Back to 24 minutes and 9 seconds. The tape rewound itself. Gabe stood up so fast the chair screeched beneath him. The screen flickered. New footage. No prompt. No menu. Just an instant jump to a different scene. This one showed the bathroom mirror in the beach house. Steam fogged the glass. Somewhere off-screen, water dripped slowly. The camera didn't move. It was perched on something steady, maybe a shelf. And in the reflection, a figure appeared. Still. Watching. Gabe's eyes narrowed. Not Michael. Not Jenna. The same figure from before, dark clothes, pale face, emotionless. The camera zoomed ever so slightly. The lens focused on the reflection. Then the figure in the mirror turned. But not toward the camera. Toward Gabe. He flinched backward as if the man had turned toward him directly, not the camera in the scene. The figure's face filled the frame, just slightly out of focus. No expression. But his eyes were wrong. They didn't just look into the camera. They knew it was watching. And then the tape cut out again. Black screen. Gabe stood in silence. His breath came in short, shallow bursts. The shed felt smaller. The air felt thinner. He ejected the tape. On the spine, etched faintly next to X3, he noticed something he hadn't before. Tiny, almost invisible lettering, scratched in the plastic. "They saw me last." He put the tape down gently, like it might break if he moved too fast. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Back in the main house, he locked every door. Every window. He turned on lights he normally kept off. Upstairs, Rachel was playing music, something soft and folksy that bled faintly through the floorboards. The sound was comforting, anchoring. But he knew what was waiting for him in the shed. 2 more tapes. One from the attic. One from the original box. He stared at both and picked up the one labeled 4 from the original 5. If the sequence meant anything, this would be the next in line. He hesitated only a moment before taking it back out to the shed. The VCR accepted it with a soft mechanical hum. The screen came alive. The angle was from the outside deck, facing the glass doors of the rental's living room. It was night. Inside, through the glass, Jenna stood alone. She stared at something off-screen, unmoving. Then she turned. And looked directly into the lens. Her mouth moved. No sound. She raised one hand, palm outward, like she was trying to signal something. Then she lifted her other hand. Held up two fingers. The tape cut to static. Then a man's voice, one Gabe hadn't heard before, spoke slowly, clearly. There were two cameras. Gabe hit stop. And sat in total silence. Two cameras. Two sets of tapes. One in plain sight. The other, hidden all this time. The whisper echoed in Gabe's mind long after the tape stopped. There were two cameras. He stared at the VCR, replaying those four words over and over. The tone hadn't been threatening. It had been matter of fact, like a reminder. Like someone filling in a blank he hadn't even known was there. Two cameras. Two sets of footage. That explained the strange shifts in angle, the sudden jumps in point of view. One camera had been capturing the Foster couple's moments from seemingly natural positions, the countertop, a corner of the living room, even a stable mount in the kitchen. The second, was different. That footage was personal. Intimate. Sinister. Someone had filmed them from behind doors, from hallways, from the attic mirror. Someone who wasn't just recording. They were participating. Gabe stood, shoved the shed door open, and made his way back to the main house. His hands trembled as he typed in the passcode and shut the door behind him. He was beginning to feel like an intruder in his own property. He crossed to the small built-in desk by the kitchen, where the old owner kept documents in a warping drawer beneath the router. Gabe had seen it before, faded blueprints, circuit breaker guides, old receipts. But now he was looking for something specific. He yanked open the drawer and began digging. After a few minutes of peeling through envelopes and curled paper, he found it, an original rental ledger from 1997. He flipped through it fast, then slowed when he reached July. July 3rd to 7th 1997, Foster, M. and J. And underneath it, in the same red ink he'd seen in the crawlspace. X, denied. Do not reissue key. That wasn't just a cancellation. That was a restriction. He turned the page. July 8th was blank. July 9th too. Then, suddenly. July 10th to 13th, private film crew, W. Devon. Gabe blinked. That name, Devon. It stirred something. He ran to his laptop, opened a browser, and searched, W. Devon, Seabrook filming, 1997. Nothing at first. But then, an archived newspaper clipping from a community newsletter. Independent filmmaker Willard Devon to shoot experimental video series near the Seabrook coastline. When asked for a synopsis, Devon replied, "I'm just recording the spaces people leave behind." The article was dated July 5, 1997. 3 days before the Fosters vanished. Gabe sat back, heart pounding. He searched the name deeper now, Willard Devon, director, Seabrook, missing. The first few links were dead. But then he hit something, an old Reddit post in a forum called Unsolved Cinemas. Whatever happened to Willard Devon? Posted by user, cam_echo17, 6 years ago. He filmed something in the late 90s that was supposedly banned. Rumors say it was confiscated or buried by a studio that funded him. Never released. Only known footage is part of a college film class in Oregon where Devon allegedly taught under an alias. Then he just vanished. No death certificate. No public record after 2003. Beneath the post, one reply stood out. He didn't vanish. He became the camera. Gabe clicked the profile. Deleted. He shut the laptop and stood. His head buzzed. His chest was tight. It was all converging. The tapes. The house. Devon. The second camera. And now the attic. The tapes from up there weren't numbered in order. They were labeled X, like the red X in the ledger. Not a letter. A code. A warning. Gabe went back to the attic before he could talk himself out of it. He pulled down the hatch and climbed up, his flashlight scanning the cramped space again. This time, he noticed something new. One of the attic beams had a series of tiny nails hammered in at exact intervals, forming a grid. Beneath it, strands of tape hung like ribbons. Cassette tape. VHS tape. Audio reels. Someone had strung them up deliberately, like decorations, or a map. He counted the reels. 12. Just like the tapes. He followed the lines with his eyes. They pointed, subtly, toward the back corner of the attic, where the insulation looked disturbed. Gabe crawled toward it and peeled the panel away. Behind it, a small cavity. Inside, a folder wrapped in twine. He pulled it out, coughed from the dust, and crawled back down. In the shed, he laid the folder on the table and untied the string. Inside were photos, grainy black and white prints, most of them blurred. People sleeping. People eating. People sitting in chairs, unaware of a camera. All of them in this house. All of them before 1997. Then he found the final photo. Michael Foster. Standing in the hallway. Looking right into the camera. But not like he'd just noticed it. Like he'd known it was there all along. Scrawled on the back in red ink. He broke the rule. He saw the lens. Beneath it, a second line. That's why they took her. Gabe stared at the note, breath caught in his throat. They took her. Not both. Just her. But where? And why? By now, Gabe knew he couldn't keep pretending this was a simple discovery. These tapes weren't evidence in the traditional sense, they were something else. A record. A warning. Maybe even a confession. But not just anyone's. He kept thinking about the photos in the attic, especially the last one, Michael Foster staring into the lens. That expression, not fear, not confusion, recognition. Michael had seen something. Understood something. And then Jenna was gone. Gabe needed answers. But the kind of answers he was chasing weren't online. He'd reached the end of what the internet could offer. The rest was buried in memory. In town. In people who had lived here long enough to stop asking questions and just forget. So he drove. Downtown Seabrook was only 10 minutes away, 3 if you took the back road through the woods, which Gabe did. He pulled up beside a closed ice cream stand that hadn't reopened in years. Across the street was the Seabrook Historical Society, housed in a squat brick building next to the fire department. He parked and walked inside. The air smelled of dust and lemon polish. A bell above the door jingled. An elderly man in a flannel shirt looked up from behind the counter. "Help you? I'm looking for any old records on a guy named Willard Devon. Filmmaker. Might have rented property here in 1997. Maybe later, too." The man stared a moment, then nodded slowly. "I remember him." Gabe stepped closer. "You do?" "Not personally. But I knew his type. Real artsy. Weird. Always lugging around cameras. Stayed with the Blackburns back in the day, small cabin out past Moss Cove. Said he was filming nature. But people in town talked. Some swore they saw flashes in the woods. Sounds at night. Flashes. The old man leaned forward. Like camera flashes. Only no one could find where they came from. Gabe nodded, unsure what to say. There was a story, the man added, lowering his voice. Said he was shooting a documentary, but he kept asking the wrong kind of questions. Wanted to know about disappearances. Not just the Fosters. Others. A fisherman in 89. A family of 3 in 72. All near the bluffs. All with one thing in common. Gabe waited. The man tapped the counter. They were all staying in that house. Gabe swallowed. You know what else is funny, the man continued. He vanished too. Poof. Just like the rest of them. Only thing they ever found was his car, parked on a dirt road near Birch Hollow. No sign of him. But the sheriff, back then, he burned something. Something Devon left behind. Said it was too upsetting. What was it? No one knows. Some say it was footage. Some say it was a letter. Some say it was a mirror. A mirror? The man shrugged. That's what I heard. Like I said, weird. Gabe left soon after, but not before the man scribbled something on a scrap of paper and slid it across the counter. Talk to Elsie Morris. She was the property clerk back then. Kept the old logs. Lived through more in this town than anyone else. You want the truth, she might still remember where it's buried. Gabe took the paper and left. Elsie lived in a one-story bungalow on the edge of town. Gabe knocked twice, then 3 times. No answer. He was about to turn away when the door creaked open. A woman in her 80s stared at him. Small frame, sharp eyes. You're not here to sell me anything, are you? No. I was told you might remember something about Willard Devon. And the Fosters. Her expression didn't change. But she didn't shut the door either. Come in. Her living room was neat, cluttered with antiques and lace doilies, but there was nothing fragile about her voice. I remember Devon, she said, pouring tea without offering. He was smart. Too smart. Thought he could outsmart whatever was out there. What do you mean? He didn't understand the house. No one does. That place has a memory longer than this town's history. People think the disappearances started with the Fosters, but that was just the one they couldn't cover up. She handed him a folder, unmarked, thick, filled with brittle papers. I kept these, she said. They told me to destroy them. But I didn't. I thought someone would come asking eventually. Inside were police reports, property transfers, and, most importantly, a map. Drawn by hand. The layout of the rental house. But different. There was a room that didn't exist on any blueprint Gabe had ever seen. Located beneath the floorboards. Basement, he asked. Elsie shook her head. It's not on the land records. Wasn't dug out. It's older. You want to find the real story, that's where it starts. Gabe drove back to the house in silence. It was late afternoon now. The sky beginning to dim. He didn't stop at the shed. He went straight to the hallway between the units. He ran his hand along the floorboards. Tap. Tap. Hollow. Then, a thud. He got a crowbar from the shed and pried it up. Beneath was a wooden hatch. No hinges. Just nailed shut. He pulled the nails free, one by one, until the wood gave way and opened with a crack. A ladder descended into darkness. Air wafted up, stale, cold, still. He grabbed his flashlight and climbed down. The space was small. Claustrophobic. Bare walls, dirt floor. And in the center. A chair. Facing the far wall. A single bulb above it, hanging from a cord. And beside it? A mirror. But not a mirror like any Gabe had seen. This one was built into the wall. Like a one-way window. He stood behind the chair. Looked into the mirror. Nothing reflected. Not even himself. The flashlight beam wavered in Gabe's hand. He stood perfectly still, staring at the mirror built into the wall, if it was a mirror at all. The light from above swung slightly from the movement he'd made climbing down, casting shifting shadows across the dirt walls of the hidden room. But the mirror didn't reflect a thing. Not Gabe. Not the chair. Not even the flickering bulb above. It was a black pane of glass, silent and opaque. He stepped forward, slowly, heart pounding in his chest. He was no longer sure what he hoped to find. There were faint smudges on the surface of the mirror, like fingerprints or maybe breath. He leaned in. Listened. Nothing. Then, as he stood inches away, something happened. A flicker. Not in the light, but in the mirror itself. He didn't see himself appear. He saw a room. Not the one he was standing in. Another room. Larger. Brighter. With walls that pulsed slightly, like lungs. And in the center of that room. The chair. The same one behind Gabe now. Only, in the mirror's version, someone sat in it. Not him. Someone else. Bound. Their head lolled to the side, motionless. Gabe staggered back, stumbling over the floorboards. He hit the dirt hard, kicking up dust. When he looked again, the mirror was black. Empty. Silent. He scrambled to his feet and backed away. The chair behind him now felt like a threat, like a witness. Every nerve in his body told him to get out. Whatever this room was, whatever it had been used for, he wasn't supposed to be down here. He climbed back up through the hatch, slamming it shut behind him. He nailed it closed without thinking, hands shaking as he hammered. The sun was nearly gone outside, and the house had darkened into long shadows. Inside, the silence felt alive. Upstairs, he heard Rachel's voice, muffled. She was on the phone, talking to someone. He couldn't make out words. He didn't want to. He didn't tell her about the mirror. He didn't tell her about the chair. Instead, he went straight to the shed, locked the door behind him, and put in the final tape from the original box. Tape 5. This time, he didn't know what to expect. He braced himself, eyes locked on the screen. The footage opened on a birthday cake. Candles. Frosting. A name written on top, Jenna. Michael's voice off screen, "Happy birthday to the best thing that ever happened to me." Laughter. Clinking glasses. Gabe's heart twisted. This wasn't the end of something. This was the beginning. The camera turned briefly toward Michael, smiling, holding a wine bottle, and then back to Jenna, who winked at the lens and said, "You better not be filming this. You're gonna make me cry." The screen froze on her face. And the timestamp in the corner began to tick backward. Gabe sat forward. 10 seconds. 20. 30. The footage reversed, slowly, like the tape was undoing itself. Then it stopped at a dark, grainy frame. Jenna was no longer in the shot. The camera had changed location. It was positioned high, possibly in the attic. Facing down into the bedroom. Michael lay asleep on the bed. The door creaked open. A figure entered. Not Jenna. Not Gabe. Not anyone familiar. The figure stood silently at the foot of the bed for almost 30 seconds. Then, slowly, walked forward, out of frame. Michael stirred. Sat up. Looked toward the door. "Jenna," he said. Then louder, "Jenna." No answer. He stood up and walked into the hall. The camera didn't follow. Instead, it zoomed slightly toward the closet door. Which slowly opened on its own. Inside, just darkness. And a face. Watching. Then, cut to black. No audio. No credits. Just the final frame. A flickering image of the house from the outside. Then, burned faintly into the bottom right corner. X. I saw her leave. He stayed. The tape ended. Gabe sat in the dark, the static buzzing like insects inside his skull. The voice that had haunted every tape was right. This wasn't the beginning. The Fosters weren't the first. They were simply the ones who looked back. Who saw the lens. And now, Gabe had done the same. Gabe didn't sleep that night. He didn't even try. He sat on the floor of the shed, staring at the last remaining cassette from the attic. It was different from the others, thinner plastic, no number scratched on the side. Just a single, handwritten label barely legible under the dust. Final, do not duplicate. He didn't move for over an hour. When he finally slid it into the VCR, the machine clicked louder than usual. As if it, too, recognized this was something that should have remained buried. The tape spun. Static. Then black. Then slowly, the screen revealed the mirror. The one from beneath the floor. But now, something had changed. The mirror's surface wasn't black anymore, it reflected the chair, the bulb, the room. It reflected Gabe. He froze. The video wasn't archival. It was live. The reflection moved as he moved. The shed behind him. The dim light. Even the red hoodie he was wearing, perfectly mirrored. He stood. Waved slowly. On screen, the reflection did the same. Then, half a second later, it didn't. The figure in the mirror paused. Its hand froze in the air. And then, without warning, lowered it. Gabe hadn't moved. The figure in the mirror tilted its head. Smiled. And began to walk forward. Gabe stumbled backward in the shed, knocking over a box. The VCR hissed, the screen glitching, distorting. Then. Cut. To a shot of Rachel, sleeping upstairs. The camera was mounted high. Hidden. A timestamp blinked in the corner, live, 3:14 a.m. Gabe looked at the digital clock on the wall. 3:14. This wasn't playback. This was happening now. The camera panned slightly. Not automatically. By hand. Someone was up there. Watching her. In the house. Gabe bolted out of the shed and across the lawn, the cold air burning his lungs. He burst through the side door, took the stairs 2 at a time. Rachel, he shouted. He slammed into the bedroom door. Empty. The blankets were pulled back. The window wide open. A breeze moved the curtains like reaching fingers. Rachel? He ran to the window. Nothing outside. Just trees and sea mist. He checked the whole unit. Then the one downstairs. Every closet. Every shadow. No sign of her. Only silence. And a faint click. From the attic. Gabe's body went cold. He climbed the ladder, heart in his throat. The hatch creaked open. The attic was darker than before. No light. No tapes. Just a single, new chair, set at the far end. Facing a fresh wall of mirrors. All of them reflecting nothing. Gabe backed down the ladder slowly. As he reached the floor, he saw something by the front door. A photograph. Polaroid. He picked it up with trembling fingers. Rachel. Sitting in the chair below the house. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Not screaming. Just watching. On the back of the photo, in the same red ink as the others. She saw too much. So now she's part of it. Gabe stumbled out of the house. Down the bluff. Into the woods. He didn't stop running until he reached the highway. When the sheriff found him the next morning, he was barefoot, shaking, eyes bloodshot. He told them everything. About the tapes. The attic. The mirror. Rachel. They searched the house. Found no attic. No chair. No mirror under the floor. No tapes. Nothing. Only the photograph. And the ledger. They called it a hoax. Said Rachel had left on her own. The property was sold months later to a couple from out of state. They restored it. Rented it. Marketed it as a quaint, vintage escape on the Washington coast. No one talks about the Fosters anymore. Or the others. Or what's buried beneath the floor. But every now and then, in the dead of night, a light flickers in the attic window. And sometimes, only sometimes, you can still see the mirror. Waiting. Watching. Gabe wasn't sure how long he'd been in the hospital. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, and the white noise of distant footsteps and rolling carts made everything feel dreamlike. But this wasn't a dream. It wasn't even a memory. It was the aftermath. He kept hearing the words over and over. There was no attic. No tapes. No Rachel. Except he knew they were wrong. Rachel didn't leave. She was taken. And the mirror, the reflection that didn't follow him, it was real. A social worker named Dana had been assigned to speak with him. She had kind eyes but careful words. She asked about stress. Hallucinations. Personal loss. Gabe nodded when he was supposed to. But he didn't tell her about the photo still tucked in his pocket, the Polaroid of Rachel in the chair. He needed proof. Something they hadn't taken. When he was released 2 days later, Gabe didn't go home. He drove instead to a local antique shop in town, the kind that never threw anything away. The owner, a hunched man named Travis, greeted him with suspicion. "I'm looking for old camera gear," Gabe said. "VHS. Tripods. Anything from the 90s. Travis raised an eyebrow. "We might have some in the back." Gabe followed him through aisles of musty furniture, past mannequins with glass eyes and cracked clocks that hadn't ticked in years. In the back, stacked under a dusty quilt, was a box of tapes. Gabe's hands shook as he opened it. More Devon tapes. They weren't labeled like the others. Just numbers and symbols. He asked where they came from. "Estate sale," Travis muttered. "Guy who owned a cabin out by Moss Cove. Said they cleared out the place after he died. Most of it was junk. That box came with Moss Cove. Where Devon had filmed. Gabe bought them all. Rushed home. Borrowed a working VCR from a friend. And then he watched. One by one. The tapes weren't edited. No title screens. No music. Just long, silent footage of empty rooms. Bedrooms. Kitchens. Porches. All different houses, but always the same camera angle, high, still, always looking down. He thought they were nothing at first. Until the 5th tape. At the 14-minute mark, in the background of a still shot of a bathroom mirror, Rachel walked by. Gabe froze the frame. It was her. Same red flannel she'd worn that last week. Her hair up. Her posture unmistakable. She looked into the mirror. And paused. Then she walked back out of frame. The camera stayed still. But Gabe felt it, someone else was there. Watching. Recording. He replayed it again. Then zoomed in. Behind her, just a flicker, was another mirror in the hallway. And in that mirror, a shadow moved. Not hers. Someone else. Someone taller. Someone watching her.